My wife secretly discarded my late sister's paintings because she found them unsettling, so I ended our marriage and left her with nothing. Some things may not hold value to the world, but they mean everything to you. My little sister's drawings weren't masterpieces, they weren't museum-worthy, and no art critic would have given them a second glance. But to me, they were the only remnants I had left of her. Lilan was 12 when she passed away. She had always been full of life, the kind of child who could turn anything into an adventure. She loved climbing trees, running barefoot in the grass, and more than anything, drawing. She would sit on the floor with crayons, pencils, or whatever she could find, filling page after page with strange, colorful worlds that only she could fully grasp. Some people thought her drawings were eerie. They weren't the typical cheerful stick figures or houses with smiling suns. She enjoyed sketching distorted faces, elongated shadows, and creatures with too many eyes, not because they frightened her, but because she found them fascinating. She once told me, "Things don't have to be pretty to be special." She was right, but cancer doesn't care how special you are. It took her in less than a year. I was 18, just starting college, busy with classes, work, and my new life. I kept telling myself I'd visit her more next week, but then next week turned into no more weeks. After she was gone, my parents packed away her belongings. They needed to move on. They couldn't bear to keep reminders of what they had lost. But I couldn't do that. So I took her drawings, all of them. I framed some and stored others in folders, lining the walls of my apartment with them, covering every empty space with the only pieces of Lilan I had left. For years, those drawings were the only things that made me feel close to her. Then Sophie entered my life. Sophie and I had been together for 3 years, engaged for 1. She was charming, beautiful, and had a way of making everything seem effortless. We moved in together after a year, and at first everything was great. She never directly insulted Lilan's drawings, but I noticed things. The way she avoided looking at them, the subtle, passive comments she would make. "I don't know how you sleep with those staring at you. They make the apartment feel so dark. I swear sometimes I feel like they move at night." I always brushed it off. She didn't have to like them. She just had to respect them. And for 2 years I thought she did. Until I came home one evening and everything was gone. I walked in, expecting the apartment to feel like home, but instead it felt like a stranger's space. The walls were bare. For a moment, I thought maybe I had walked into the wrong apartment, or perhaps Sophie had taken them down to clean. But then I saw the empty nails where the frames used to hang, the faint outlines on the walls where they had once been. Something cold settled in my stomach. I checked the hallway closet. Nothing. I looked under the bed, behind the couch, in the storage boxes we kept in the spare room. Gone. Every single one of Lilan's paintings was gone. Sophie was in the kitchen, humming as she poured herself a glass of wine, as if she hadn't just erased my sister from existence. I stood there, gripping the back of a chair to keep my hands from shaking. "Where are Lilan's paintings?" Sophie turned, glass in hand. "What?" "My sister's paintings," I repeated, my voice tight. "Where did you put them?" She let out a small laugh, like I had asked something ridiculous. "Oh, I threw them out." The room felt too quiet. I stared at her, waiting for her to say it was a joke, a misunderstanding. She just took a sip of wine and set the glass down. "They were weird, Nathan. I don't know how you lived with them staring at you all the time. I kept having nightmares. The apartment feels so much lighter now, doesn't it?" I couldn't move. She threw them out, not packed them away, not put them in storage. She got rid of them. I felt something in my chest cave in. "Where?" Sophie frowned. "Where what? Where did you throw them?" My voice was quieter now. She waved, a hand. "Nathan, don't be weird about this. They were old, and let's be real, they weren't exactly..." She sighed. "The dumpster. But that was this morning. Trash pickup already happened." I don't remember leaving the apartment. 1 second, I was standing there listening to her say my sister's memory wasn't worth keeping. The next, I was outside, sprinting toward the dumpster behind our building. The stench hit me immediately, but I didn't care. I tore through bag after bag, hands shaking, breath coming in short bursts. I knew it was too late, but I couldn't stop. Then I saw it, a crumpled corner of a canvas, soaked, torn, crushed. It used to be one of Lilan's favorite drawings, a messy, colorful self-portrait, full of uneven brushstrokes and chaotic swirls of paint. Now, it was ruined. I lifted it carefully, but the paint was already peeling, the water damage soaking through. I turned it over and saw tire tracks. It hadn't just been thrown away, it had been run over. I sat back, the ruined canvas in my hands, my heart pounding. She had thrown my sister away, and now I was going to do the same to her. I didn't go back upstairs right away. I sat in my car, hands clenched around the steering wheel, forcing myself to breathe. I couldn't lose control. I wouldn't. Sophie expected me to be upset. Maybe she even thought I'd sulk for a few days, then get over it. I wasn't going to give her tears or arguments. I was going to give her something far worse. I was going to make her think everything was fine, and then, when she least expected it, I was going to destroy her. The first step was getting my affairs in order. Sophie had been living in my apartment for 2 years, but her name wasn't on the lease. I went to the leasing office the next morning and removed her as an occupant. By the end of the month, she wouldn't be legally allowed to live there anymore. Next, I drained our joint bank account. Sophie didn't handle the finances, I did. She had her own separate savings, but for shared expenses, we had a joint account. I left just enough so she wouldn't notice right away. Then, I started separating my name from every shared bill, credit card, and utility. When I left, she would have nothing. Sophie had no idea. For the next week, I acted normal. I ate dinner with her, laughed at the right moments, kissed her goodnight. I even pretended to agree with her decision. "You know, maybe you were right," I said one evening. "Maybe I was holding on to them too much." Sophie beamed, looking pleased with herself. "I knew you'd see reason," she said. "I was just trying to help you move on, Nathan." I nodded, taking a sip of my drink. She thought she had fixed me. She thought she had won. She had no idea that her life was already crumbling beneath her feet. A few days before I planned to leave, I let her pay for the honeymoon. She had been pushing to book the tickets, so I played along, nodding as she looked at flights and resorts. Then, when she was ready, she paid for everything. Thousands of dollars gone for a future that didn't exist. And the best part, she had no clue. The night before I left, I packed my bags while she was asleep. When she woke up, I was waiting for her in the kitchen. She stretched, yawning. "Morning," she mumbled. "I was thinking we're done." She froze. "What?" I set the folder on the table in front of her. The lease removal, the empty bank statements, the legal separation papers. Sophie's face went pale. What is this?" she whispered. I leaned back. "It's what happens when you throw away my sister like she was nothing." Her breath hitched. "Nathan, you can't be serious." I tilted my head. "You thought you could erase the pieces of my sister, and I'd just move on like it meant nothing?" She stammered, flipping through the papers as if she could undo what she was reading. "You drained our account," she choked out. "My account," I corrected. "You never contributed to it." Her hands were shaking. "Nathan, please." "You destroyed something irreplaceable," I said, standing. "So now I'm doing the same to you." Sophie reached for me, desperation in her eyes. I stepped back. "You have until the end of the month to leave." Then I grabbed my bag, walked to the door, and without looking back, I left. Sophie sat frozen, her hands gripping the papers like they might disappear if she held them tight enough. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, she let out a shaky breath. "Nathan, this isn't funny. You're overreacting." I just stared at her. "I'm overreacting?" She swallowed, flipping through the pages, scanning them as if she could find some mistake, some loophole that would undo what she was seeing. "You're really leaving me?" she whispered. I leaned back against the counter, crossing my arms. I already did. At first, she tried bargaining. Nathan, this is ridiculous. We can talk about this. You don't have to. You threw away my sister like she was nothing, I cut in. Why should I treat you any differently? She flinched. That's not fair. I didn't mean it like that. I was trying to help you move on. Move on? I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. Sophie, you didn't just throw away some old junk. You took the last things I had of Lilan and tossed them like garbage, and you didn't even have the decency to tell me. She opened. Her mouth then shut it because we both knew she hadn't told me because she didn't think I'd care. She thought I'd get upset, sulk for a few days, then let it go. She thought she could erase Lilan from my life. Now, she was realizing just how wrong she had been. Then came the anger. You're really going to ruin our life over some creepy kid's drawings? Her voice rose, her face twisting with frustration. That's what this is about? Some ugly little scribbles? Jesus, Nathan, I thought you were smarter than this. She was trying to make me feel stupid, like I was overreacting, like she was the victim. But I didn't bite. I just tilted my head. Tell me, Sophie, if they were so worthless, why do you care so much that I'm leaving? Her jaw clenched. Because we have a life together. No, I corrected. We had a life together. And you threw it away, just like you. Threw away my sister. Her breath hitched. Nathan, please. I picked up my keys. You have until the end of the month to find somewhere else to live. She shook her head furiously. You can't do this. You can't just kick me out. I raised an eyebrow. Legally, I can. She froze, then grabbed the lease notice again, her eyes scanning the page frantically. You... How? You... We're never on the lease, Sophie. My voice was calm. You lived here because I let you. Now I don't. She let out a choked sound, her chest rising and falling rapidly. You don't have the right, she whispered. I met her eyes. Neither did you. That's when reality hit her. She looked around the apartment as if suddenly realizing that it wasn't hers, that everything in here, everything she had built her comfortable life on, was about to disappear, and she had no way to stop it. You drained the account, she said suddenly, like she had just remembered. Our money, my money, I corrected. You never contributed to that account, you just spent from it. Her lips parted. But I don't have enough in my savings to figure it out. Her hands were shaking. Nathan, please. I don't have anywhere to go. I shrugged. Not my problem. She tried calling her parents next. I let her. I leaned against the counter, watching as she grabbed her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed. Mom, I need help, she said, her voice breaking. I could hear the sharp tone of her mother's voice even from across the room. Sophie flinched. No, it's not my fault. He's being... Her mother cut her off. Sophie's eyes widened. Wait, Mom, don't say that. No, please, just listen. Another sharp response, and then the call ended. She stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. She turned to me, eyes wild. You told them? I nodded. Yeah. Your dad wasn't too happy when he found out you threw away the last memories I had of my dead sister. Her breath shuddered. They're not helping you, are they? I asked, tilting my head. She just stared at me, unblinking. And that's when I knew. Her parents had washed their hands of her. She sank onto the couch, her whole body trembling. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered. I didn't answer. I just picked up my bag, walked to the door, and paused for a brief second. Then I turned to her one last time. You wanted me to move on, Sophie, I said quietly. Now I finally have. Then I walked out, and I never looked back. I never spoke to Sophie again. I blocked her number, her social media, every way she could reach me. She tried, of course. The voicemails started out apologetic, then turned angry, then became desperate. I never listened to them. She had spent years living in my home, spending my money, pretending to respect my grief. Now she had nothing. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she had to move back in with her parents. They weren't thrilled. They knew what she had done. Her dad was furious. Her mom was humiliated. They let her stay, but the respect was gone. She had thrown away the one person who actually loved her. Now she was alone. Thanks for watching. Subscribe Storycast for more new stories.